Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to our latest Community Bike Share Forum. I'm Harriet Cross from CoMoUK, the national charity promoting the benefits of shared transport for the public good. Some of you have been to these before and I recognise some of your names and faces, and there are some new faces. So just to give an overview, this particular forum is about supporting Scottish community groups to set up bike share schemes, and often has a format of having a few projects sharing their own experiences and then an opportunity to ask them questions. Today we have quite a bit to get through, so just some housekeeping before I introduce the speakers. The session will be recorded for anyone who wants to listen to it back or watch it again, or share it, sorry. Please keep yourselves on mute unless you have a question to ask or you are presenting, and I'll make it clear when we're moving to the Q&A. I'm going to be try to be strict on sticking to the schedule. Speakers know to keep to their times and I will prompt if overrunning. When it comes to Q&As, please raise your virtual hand by clicking on the participant tab and there'll be a little hand symbol. Or if you can't do that, or if you feel more comfortable doing that, put your question in the chat box, and if all else fails, just speak. If we don't manage to get to your questions, contact details will be shared during and after the session, so they can be followed up with. So I'm just going to share my screen to introduce the speakers. Okay. You'll see that. Okay. Oh, sorry. So today we have Kate Hathaway, who'll be talking about the her bike project in Cardiff Calsh with the Highland Third Sector Interface. We have David Liddell from West Lothian Bike Library. After that, we'll give them some time to answer some questions, and then we'll move over to funding. And we have Sandra Laverne from Cycling Scotland, Graham McQueen, Paths for All, Laura McAdam, Energy Saving Trust, and then Toby Anderson from Community Shares Scotland, who will be talking about an alternative way to finance your bike share scheme, if this is of interest. So I think I'm just going to now hand over to Kate. So if we can spotlight Kate, over to you. Thanks very much.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Okay. And can I just check that you can see my, can I just check that everybody can see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. You can probably see all the ones down the side as well, can't you? I don't think I can change that.
If you click on slideshow, just there.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, cool. Yeah. That's fine. I'll get the basics out of the way first, obviously. Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Hathaway, and I work for a project called Let's Get On With It Together. And we are part of the Highland Third Sector Interface. We're a project that aim to support people with long-term conditions in self-management. So what I'm just going to briefly do in this presentation is talk about the Kyle Community e-bike project, basically how we came about, what the aims of the project are, how we operate, and a few statistics about our users and the bike usage over the last year, and a little bit about our future or legacy, so to speak. So basically, as I said, we work with people with long-term conditions, and about 18 months ago, Legowitz were part of a project called the Highland Green Health Partnership. And the idea behind that was for GPs to be able to refer people to healthier they called them green referrals. So whether that was outside walking groups were established through Paths for All, etc. And I just sort of thought there'd be a really good opportunity to work with people who have long-term conditions and needed some rehab, and also for GPs to point them in the direction. And what better a tool for rehab, I thought, than e-bikes. and also adding into it the sustainable travel aspects, etc. as well. So Kyle was one of about 6 projects as part of these the pilots for the Green Health Partnership, and I successfully bidded to the Energy Saving Trust. And as you can see in the slide there, we got £12,500, and that was initially for 4 e-bikes and an e-trike. So after a couple of months using the e-trike, unfortunately, we found out that the terrain was a little bit too mountainous for it. So the e-trike went back, and we replaced them with a couple more e-bikes. Subsequently to that, we also got some funding from Hightrans for bike storage. So we got some locker pods, and then also because it was bang in the middle of the COVID lockdown, Cycling UK gave us a little bit of extra funding to encourage key workers to use the e-bikes before the general public started to use them. So we had lots of teachers and doctors and nurses and things trying them out to begin with. So that was really useful. Similar to probably a lot of e-bike aims, we were looking at promoting cycling and sustainable travel, and particularly amongst people with long-term conditions, as I said, and working in partnership. We have an emerging Skye cycleway, which is being developed just now, which links the villages Kyle Vocalsh to Broadford on Skye. Very, very busy, heavy sort of traffic road. So to have an off-road cycle path was a great opportunity. So that's been on the go for a couple of years now, and I think hopefully there's some progress. They've been having to get around quite a few issues with crossing rights, etc., to get the cycle going. But we've been working quite closely with them, and just trying to build momentum behind getting people out on bikes, etc. And then obviously there was trying to encourage people who might not normally use bikes as a way of getting into some fitness by using the e-bikes as a great sort of way to encourage them. By way of allocations, social media is fantastic, but we also have articles probably every couple of months in the Free Press, and that's our local rag, and how people can get in touch. A lot of people either phone, or we just use Woohoo, which is a really simple, I don't know if I'm allowed to name drop any particular apps, but anyway, we use Woohoo, and that seems to be really straightforward, and basically everything's just first come, first serve. We have a bit of a list of folk, and the loan periods, depending on the time of year. During the winter, we let people have the bikes for free for up to a month, just because they could probably had about, I don't know if anyone knows the west coast of Scotland and the Highlands here, probably about 2 or 3 rideable days out of a month due to the weather. We were very lucky that my husband is actually a bike mechanic, and he runs his own bike company. So he has been able to maintain the bikes. And, e-bikes need a bit more servicing because they're heavy, obviously, and the brakes need to be checked pretty much on every turnaround. So they get checked, and he'll do a sort of £5 check on that. And so to date, the maintenance, as you can see, for the last 12 months or so has been about £495 for the bike changeovers. A few nice photographs to break up the wording there. As you can see, it's actually one picture I nicked, that one, which looks like the best picture there. That's the guy looking out to the mountains, but that's not too far from here, so I thought I'd use that picture. The rest are all the rest have all been provided by users. So we try and get everybody to take nice pictures when they're out and about to encourage other people to use them, and at least sort of 2 or 3 people in that picture I know have had hip replacements and things like that. So it's shown quite a good user profile. So overall, we've had 63 loans to date, which doesn't seem like a huge amount, but considering most people are having the bikes for 2 to 3 weeks, then it's been quite a busy time. And I'm given 2 hours a week of my time to do all the bike admin. So yeah, it's pretty, and I quite often do it into my voluntary time as well. So unfortunately, I can't stick to 2 hours. We see the average age has been 50 years, and The average loan mileage is about 40 miles, which is not a huge amount, but people tend to go out on a longer ride to begin with, you know, for the weekend, and then just do shorter journeys around the place and just use it for their shopping and things like that, which is great. But that seems to be what we've found so far. This isn't entirely accurate because we've had more users since then, but it'll just shows you the breakdown between male and female. A lot more ladies are interested in taking the bikes. This just shows you a wee bit of a breakdown in terms of our long-term conditions. So joint replacements is quite a large percentage of people. So we've had lots of folk with knee replacements and hip replacements, and subsequently they have gone on having used the bikes. There's a whole village, in fact, of elderly folk. I shouldn't say that, but anyway, the whole village. And following the trial of the bikes, they all seem to have purchased their own e-bikes. And yes, they're all of an age where they've had various joint replacements. And there's quite a high percentage of people, as you see, mental health conditions and arthritis. So it's been, the bikes have been great from that point of view to encourage people to just have gentle exercise and to be able to build up and push themselves a little further, obviously by reducing the sort of power settings, etc. And so in terms of the future of the project, so at the moment, the project is due to finish August, September, but I have a newsflash. We may be able to continue for, well, hopefully until March 22. I've just been told in the last couple of days, which is great. Some of the things we've thought about are obviously gifting the bikes to, we've got several really active community projects. We've got the Loch Tay and Loch Alsh Community Trust here. We've got Broadford and Strath, and they're all really progressive groups. So one idea is perhaps gift them. The other ideas are that the organisation HTSI keep them and either redeploy them to another part of the Highlands, or they use them as pool bikes, or perhaps the bikes are sold. But it'd be great for the bikes to stay in the area. One of the difficulties, obviously, is, you know, the bikes have all been free to use for people, so it's whether or not we I'm just being told that this is being recorded. Okay. Anyway, so it's whether we move towards a model where we're charging for the bikes, and of course that's probably the way we'd have to go, because we're using some other resources at the moment to cover the cost of maintenance, but you know, it's not free. So I think that's where we'll have to move if we keep the bikes for another couple of years. Okay, so that's pretty much the end. I think I used my pictures before, so but
thanks very much, Kate.
Okay, I'll just stop the share there, will I?
Yeah, if you stop sharing, that's brilliant. Thanks for such a comprehensive overview, particularly the different health conditions that e-bikes can help people with. So I think that was really useful, and hopefully will spark some questions from some of the audience. David, are you ready to come off mute and tell us about West Lothian Bike Library?
Yes, hello. I'm Dave Little, West Lothian Bike Library. We formed as a community interest company in 2017. And we evolved from West Lothian Council Health Improvement Team, which was wound up essentially. We were formed to make cycling and activity available to everybody, regardless of income, background, ability. So we inherited a large fleet of adaptive bikes as well as standard bikes. So everything that we do in between is to generate income to keep our adaptive bikes free at source for people who need them. So in 2018, we formed a partnership with CoMoUK, Chris Slade at that time, to work with Sestran to provide the Go e-bike project, which was an employer's project. where we put a selection of e-bikes in employers' premises for a period of 6 weeks at a time, and employees had free use of them. They could book it through a smart app. And this was to encourage commuting and such like between employers' premises. That went down very well. As part of that deal, we had a selection of e-bikes for our own project, which we loaned out, similar to what we were hearing earlier, the kit, so as people could borrow them, see how they could benefit from them. A wee bit of an extension to the adaptive bikes, because most of the people coming to us either had mobility issues or just coming back to cycling after a good number of years. So, so the e-bike was ideal for them. I think the biggest winner in all this is probably our local bike shop, because I can't remember how many e-bikes he's bought from, he's had purchased by them, but he's had quite a few, including from a few of our volunteers, myself included. So everything we provide cycle training, servicing, repairs, recycling, and all of that is there to be able to provide the e-bikes and the adaptive bikes free of charge to individuals as they come along. One of the problems that we had at first was transporting the e-bikes or adaptive bikes, and some of the three, I think out of 20 odd bikes, we've got 3 that are power assisted, but they're pretty bulky. So part of the problem is transportation and storage at the other end. Consequently, most of them are borrowed, and we're lucky where we are in West Lothian. We're right on a network of shared paths, so people can come along to us, book a bike for an afternoon, and go all the way around about. So the service and repair of the e-bikes we managed to do ourselves. We've got our own core of bike mechanics. As things have gone along, so now these bikes are about 3 years old. So as was being said before, they take a lot more servicing and such like. And the older they get, the more costly it comes to keep them on the road. The numbers of e-bikes last year with the lockdown, that sort of threw us a bit, but we had 57 key workers had bike loans from us from the start of the lockdown, and all our e-bikes were out to key workers, mainly from the NHS. Some were commuting from Edinburgh and such like out to West Lothian. So most of our e-bikes were well used between the first lockdown and through into the middle of the year. And on top of that, we'd loaned loaned or donated another 49 bikes to key workers to keep them able to get back and forward to work. So it was a busy year, but our income took a bit of a hit because just the way it was. But thankfully, through small pockets of funding from different organisations, we managed to keep going. The e-bikes themselves have been, we've had so many people come back to us and say how they've changed their lives, really, from people with injuries, particularly injuries, coming back to cycling again. I can vouch for it myself. I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis, and this past year's got a lot worse. And if I was without an e-bike, I don't think I would have coped. So they are very, very popular. And as I say, our local, we've got a good relationship with our local bike shop, who's been very supportive of us as a project, and in turn he's had a lot of sales from us as well. Over the next year, some of the challenges we've got is bike replacement. We're looking at that, and well, I'm fairly confident that we'll manage that. We're in chatting with partners on that at the moment. Also, what I'm very keen to do is to increase the number of power-assisted adaptive bikes we've got. And this year, inclusiveness in cycling is supposed to be coming to the fore. What we've noticed is more and more people who use the adaptives, as they're getting older, they do need the power assistance mode. If any of you are familiar with adaptive bikes, with a Van Ram fun to go side by side, is great if you're pedaling a 12-year-old roundabout, but if you've got a fully grown adult without any lower mobility, then there's no fun in it whatsoever. So a battery makes all the difference. So this year, that's the two goals: try and replace so that we can continue doing what we're doing, and also to extend the use with hopefully an all-terrain e-bike, which particularly youngsters, we're attached to a Duke Edinburgh's award base here, so there's lots of opportunities there that something like that could be used. That's more or less it. Apparently, if anybody running an e-bike project, one good wee tip is to find somewhere like this where you can get replacement keys. And that is that's probably one of the best tools we've got in our kit at the moment, because they're very cheap and quick turnaround. But that's that from me, and I'll hear if you've got any questions.
That's brilliant. Thanks, David. I'm always struck by all the diverse activities that West Lothian Bike Library runs, and also thanks for sharing your aspirations for adaptive bikes for this year and next year. So we've got a bit of time to ask some questions just of Kate and David of their two schemes, if anyone has any. We have one in the chat box so far from Ken Gordon. This is more of a technical question, David. Which app did you use for your bike hire bookings?
It was run by the alternative bike. It was contracted through Sestran with alternative bike company, and it was with a smart lock on it. I can give you contact details and such like if anybody wants to drop me an email. They're based down Nottingham, I think it was. So basically what happened there was the employees had to register on the app and using their work's email, and then they got to be able to go on and reserve a bike or unlock it or lock it back on site. So we, as a project, we maintained the bikes and moved them from site to site. It was a good project. It went well, and I think there was 3 years, 2 full years. I think we did it until, and that was working with CoMoUK and Sestran.
Great, thank you. And we will share contact details at the end, and then also after the webinar, so that people can get those details. Question just from Graham McQueen. This is to both Kate and David. Do you find any of the people using either scheme are replacing the bikes, car journeys with the bikes? So Kate, maybe you want to come in on that one first.
Well, we've obviously got a few challenges being a rural area here, so it is quite hard to commute unless you sort of can work in the same village or town that you live in. But we have got quite a large employer on the other side of the bridge from Kyle, so that's about 2.5 miles from here, and it's a fish food factory. And I have had 2 or 3 users who work there have used the bike for up to about 6 weeks, and I know that they were using them for commuting, and they said that, and it was really helpful. So we have had that, and then some of the people in one of the local villages who probably use the bikes the most, they will use the bikes just to, instead of cars, to get to the little shop, which is about half a mile from them. So, and back and forth to the station, some people have been using the station. One of the stations is about half a mile away as well. So they've used the bikes instead of car journey. So small amount, but still quite significant, I guess.
Yeah, we've had several people give up the being a 2-car family, reduced down to a 1-car family, so as that they can commute. Some people, I don't know if anybody knows the locality, from say Linlithgow through into Edinburgh, and charge the bike up while they're at work and come back. So we've had yeah, quite a few people who've done that, and particularly with NHS workers who are coming out to West Lothian to work and cycling back and forward there. So yeah, it's been quite significant.
Both. We've got a question that quite a lot of bike schemes contact CoMo about, from Naomi Arnold, that hopefully both of you might be able to share some insight into. What information do you ask for from your bike borrowers, and what insurance do you have to ensure the bikes aren't taken away forever? So I guess she's asking what are the processes around managing that. Not sure who wants to maybe go first on that one.
Insurance, we don't. Well, we have liability, public liability insurance, obviously, for any work we've done on the bikes and such like. Our bikes are insured whilst they're on our own site, but we cannot afford to insure a bike that goes out to the public. That is a risk we've got to take. We haven't had anybody abscond with a bike so far, but we would, as a project, we wouldn't be able to afford to insure the bikes, you know, once they go off the premises. What was the other part of that question?
I mean, I think you answered it.
Yeah.
Kate, any thoughts on that?
Yes, similarly, well, we actually, our bikes are insured as having investigated the 2 or 3 known bike insurers. It was definitely going to increase our the funding amount by about, I think it was going to be about £1,000. That was what we were quoted for the e-bikes to be insured, and that was based on 6 e-bikes. So, you know, I'm sure we were probably one of the smaller e-bike projects as well. So we ended up, fortunately, we have the umbrella of the Highland Third Sector Interface. So the bikes were put onto their overall office insurance. And we have public liability, and people are insured to take the bikes out, but we aren't insured to do it commercially. So that is a different branch of insurance for us. If we were to actually start having a transaction, and I can see that that's probably the main path that a lot of people want to go down, is certainly charging. So I don't know if there are any sort of relatively low cost insurers around, whether Harriet has more information on that or not. It would be really helpful, because it can definitely be a bit of a make or break for a lot of organisations in terms of extra fundraising, etc. So, the other question was about the forms, what we ask of our users. So we've got a standard disclaimer, and people come in and they sign that, and they sort of tick every bit of equipment that they're taking, and they also say that they know how to ride bike, basically, and if anything happens, it's their fault, you know, the standard thing. So I've got that as a template. I'm really happy to share any of our paperwork or any information that people need. Okay.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Kate. I'll make a note of that as well, because then I do a follow-up email. I can just mention insurance and that you might share your template. And CoMo has templates as well to manage those processes. We can't recommend insurers, but we can signpost to providers that have given cover to other schemes. Okay, Graham Marshall. I think, yeah, I've got time for one more question. Graham Marshall has asked, have you had any success developing the schemes in areas of multiple deprivation? So particularly in West Lothian David?
Yes, there's several areas of multiple deprivation in West Lothian. Particularly when we were part of the health improvement team, we, instead of having one base, we had, I think at one time we had 5 different bases. And we also supply bikes to some of the homeless units and such like there. So yeah, there's trying to think, West Corridor Pobeth is probably the nearest to us now, but now we're in one hub, as it were, which is fairly accessible to most people. But, and some of the areas we supply, well, I think donations in the last 6 months or last year up to May were 49 actually donated, and most of them went through schools being, referred, youngsters being referred to us because the financial implications of owning a bike, or homeless units, support units. So yeah.
Thanks. And I think that also relates to your earlier point where you were talking about how to generate income in order to supplement free membership to tackle different wages and lower income potential users. So you've obviously been doing a lot for a long time. Okay, great. David and Kate, that was really useful and insightful. And I hope more conversations will come from some of our participants with yourselves after this session. So I will now ask Dave to stop spotlighting you so you don't have to look at yourselves and on the big screen. And we will now move over to a quick fire funding round, where each speaker has 3 minutes to give a whirlwind of the funding that they can provide your bike share scheme. And first up is Sandra Laverne from Cycling Scotland.
Yeah,
so over to you, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Great. Thank you very much for having me today. So my name is Sandra Laverne. I work as a development officer for communities at Cycling Scotland. So just very briefly, if you're not familiar with Cycling Scotland, we are Scotland's national cycling organisation, and we are working towards a sustainable, inclusive and healthy Scotland where anyone, anywhere can enjoy the benefits of cycling. So as part of my role, I manage the Cycling Friendly Community Fund. So basically with this fund, we are trying to enable more people to enjoy the benefits of cycling, and that is regardless of background or ability. Concretely, any community groups across Scotland can apply for up to £20,000. And please note that match funding or financial contribution are not a strict condition for applications, but if you have any question on that, I'd be happy to answer later on. In terms of what you could apply for, so we can help with both capital and revenue costs. For example, with capital cost, obviously we can help you with the provision of bicycle, but that can also be cycle parking and cycle storage, or any bike maintenance equipment for bike hubs. In terms of revenue costs, we can help you with cycle training, bike maintenance training, some seasonal cost, or even some promotional and engagement activities. Please note this is not exhaustive. And again, I'd be happy to give more information later on that. Basically, if you are interested, you can apply directly through Cycling Scotland's website. The link will be provided in the follow-up email. In terms of timeline, applications are open until the end of the week, until Friday. We anticipate a start of project in September, October. And there might be a second round of funding in autumn 2021. However, this is going to be funding dependent. So at the moment, there is no guarantee on that. Throughout the whole process, whether you work on the application or when you deliver the projects, I'm available to provide some guidance at any time. If you want to have a better idea on the type of project we've been supporting so far, please have a look at the case studies on Cycling Scotland's website. You're going to have a good idea of what we can do with the Cycling Friendly Community Fund. And that's it from me. Yeah, that was brief.
Thanks, Sandra. Sorry, you responded to the challenge well. And we'll come back to any questions at the end. And now over to Graham McQueen from Paths for All. If you could share your screen, or if you're giving links.
Which one is it? Oh, that was that. Sorry, hold on. Should be easy enough to do. Just have to be even briefer with my presentation. There we go. Okay, hi, so I'm Graham McQueen. I manage this. Can everyone see that? Sorry, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. My name's Graham McQueen. I manage the Smarter Choices, Smarter Places Open Fund for Paths for All. Smarter Choices, Smarter Places is a £7 million in total fund, funded through Transport Scotland, and as I say, managed by Paths for All. The fund has one main aim. Smarter Choices, Smarter Places aims to encourage people to change their behaviours to walk, cycle or travel sustainably for their everyday short journeys. So it's about getting people out of cars. So there you go, walking, cycling, using public transport, all included in things we can fund. And obviously bike share, bike libraries are included in that as well. And we've got grants available of between 5,000 and 50,000, and the fund is currently open and we're accepting new expressions of interest right now. So if you have ideas for projects, then let us know. To be brief with the presentation, I have now looked at the Smarter Choices, Smarter Places outcomes, because we ask each of the projects we support to work towards one of our outcomes. And as I run through them, you'll see that bike share projects or bike library projects can fit in with quite a few different ones of our outcomes. So, people choose not to travel isn't the most relevant one. It's about people working from home, home deliveries, only travelling when required. One of the major ones for bike share schemes, though, is more people choose to walk and cycle for short local journeys. So this is about walking, cycling, scooting rather than driving. And examples of how we've supported bike share schemes would be the two Next Bike schemes or the Just Eat scheme in Edinburgh, where we have funded free memberships for those schemes for people to use them, to try them out, to use them for set periods of time. And obviously that we look for reporting on that and more people cycling. So more people choose sustainable transport for longer journeys isn't really bike share, but again, we also look to projects that link bus, train, ferry, public transport with bike share and for the end-to-end journeys. So if there's any projects looking for support around linking those two up, then it's something we can look at as well. Positive attitudes towards sustainable travel choices. That's about promotion, events, incentives. So again, for example, if you've got a bike library scheme in your community and you want to promote it or you want to incentivise people to use it, then that's the kind of things we can look at supporting. People's knowledge, again, that can link in as well around advice, maps, route planning. It's perhaps a bit more secondary for the bike share schemes, but it can still link in. And then another important one, I think, is the final outcome for projects, I believe, such as you guys, a lot of you guys are thinking about setting up these type of schemes. Then we can pay for things like feasibility studies, community reviews, community consultations. We've already funded, I think, 5 or 6 different projects in specific localities, looking at what's the best options for them for bike share, whether it's a big bike share scheme, whether it's a library, whether it's another option. These are the kind of things we can fund at the early stage. So I think overall, just want to say that the fund is open. We've got grants of between £5,000 and £50,000 for revenue funding. We can't pay for the bikes or the setup of the scheme, but we can pay for everything else around it. So if you've got any questions or if we can help at all or advise, please just get in touch. And all the information, wider information, is on our website.
That's great. Thanks, Graham. A really good overview. It's good to know that you're funding community consultations and feasibility studies. That's often quite a common query from lots of community groups in Scotland about that first step. So that's great. Okay, I'd like to invite now Laura McAdam from Energy Saving Trust to talk about the e-bike grant.
Hello.
Thanks, Lauren.
the presentation. Thanks. So thanks for having me here. I'm Laura McAdam, the Assistant Programme Manager of the eBike Grant Fund, and I'm just going to give you a brief insight into the fund and the application process. So the eBike Grant Fund is for organisations in Scotland to apply for funding for a fleet of e-bikes to give a long-term loan to those in their local area as an alternative to van or car use. This will result in lowered emissions and a healthy alternative for travelling short journeys. So who can apply? Grant funding is available to assist local authorities, public sector agencies, further and higher education institutions, active travel hubs and community groups. More information can be found on our website, which I will share with you after. So the funding streams we have, the fund is split into two separate funding streams. We have Category A and Category B. Category A is open to community groups, third sector and public sector organisations who are looking for up to £25,000 per application towards projects that will provide opportunities for trials of e-bikes. Category B is for the purposes of large-scale fleets of pool bikes, bike share hire schemes, and for generally promoting the large-scale uptake of e-bikes as an alternative to car and van travel. For Category B, up to £200,000 towards a project cost haircuts and weather covers, to name a few. For Category B, which is for the uptake of the large-scale e-bike schemes, we can fund on-street docking and charging stations, which excludes the grid connection charges. For a full list of eligible bikes and equipment, you can find this all on our webpage. I would like to emphasise that this year smaller Category A applicants should be offering free longer-term trials to locals. Public car should be aimed at locals and not for tourists. We really like to encourage applicants to think outside the box and to apply not just for e-bikes, but to include e-cargo and adaptive cycles so that everyone in the community has access to cycling. Those looking to apply should think about where they will store the bikes, the free trials lasting longer than the 3 weeks, project management and who's going to run the project on a day-to-day basis, a project timeline for the first year, and who will cover the cost of maintenance and repairs. So the eBike Grant Fund, we have match funding requirements, and this is to have a maximum impact, allowing more projects to be funded and more projects tying in with the existing capital expenditure. So the match funding must not come from any Transport Scotland derived funds, but may include contributions from the private sector or other public sector bodies. For Category A funding, match funding of 25% of the overall project cost is required and in-kind match funding is considered. This could be, for instance, a staff member who requires, or someone who is going out on lead rides every day who you don't have the staff for, but you need to employ. We will not cover the cost of that, but that can be used as in-kind match funding. For public sector organisations, apply for Category A and Category B funding. Cash match funding of 50% of the total project cost is required. In all of these cases, Category A and B match funding must be secured before any project expenditure will be covered by the eBike Grant Fund. Again, a full list of these requirements are on our webpage. Lastly, the eBike Grant Fund will continue to ensure schemes are accessible to vulnerable groups within communities. Firstly, by offering subsidised e-bike hire at application stage, and this is for those on low incomes with disability or mobility issues, job seekers, modern apprentices, young people and students. Subsidised access to e-bike hire can be facilitated by user credit to cover the cost of accessing the hire schemes. This is limited to 5% of the overall project cost, including the match funding contribution, and evidence of the established cost of hire will need to be provided at the point of application. Secondly, we want to encourage organisations to expand their e-bike trial offers to be more inclusive by widening the range of e-bikes they can offer. So this includes e-cargo bikes, ordinary cargo bikes, tandems, trailers and adapted cycles and trikes. We would like applicants to consider more vulnerable groups and demonstrate how they will ensure schemes are accessible to these groups within their community. So that's it from me. If you would like to get in touch at all regarding the eBike Grant Fund, please see the contact details on the screen. I will also pop our webpage in the chat for you all. And thank you for listening, and I'm open to any questions.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
I'm sure yourself, Graham and Sandra will have lots of applications over the coming months. And it's good that you're kind of funding different aspects of a scheme. The different funders are funding different aspects of the scheme, sorry. And just to kind of think about that and think about how groups can maybe move away from just relying on grants. We've invited Toby Sanderson from Community Share Scotland to share some insight on how raising shares could potentially be a new way to finance the bike share scheme. So Toby, the floor is yours. If you're okay to share your screen, brilliant.
Yeah, thanks very much, Harriet, and good morning, everybody. Can you see my screen okay? I'm hoping so. So yeah, I'm Toby Sanderson. I'm from Community Share Scotland, and I've got hopefully quite a quick presentation about community shares and some of the support that we offer if you're interested in looking at them further. So community shares ultimately are a form of crowdfunding. At its most simple, it's a way for you to raise money by having people who support you, people who form your community, to put their own money in as an investment to help you make something happen. So it's a really flexible form of finance. It's been used to fund all sorts of community enterprises. We've worked with lots of pubs and shops across Scotland, all sorts of community buildings. We've got various sort of renewable energy initiatives, and then even into some sort of unusual things like a community-owned distillery up in the Highlands. So really anything you can make a business case for, you can hopefully have people fund through community shares. Just to say a little bit about who Community Share Scotland are. We are a government and lottery funded organisation who are around to help to promote the community shares model, help people to understand how it all works and help them think about if it's a good model for them. We do various sort of training sessions with other partners and other organisations across the country, including local authorities and things like that. But the main core part of our programme is hands-on support and guidance for people who want to do this. So we have a team based in Edinburgh, three members of staff based in Edinburgh who do sort of early stage support with groups. We can help you to assess community shares, work out if it's a good option for you. And if you're serious about it and you really want to move ahead with a community share offer, we can bring in more specialist consultancy support to really help you drill down on your plans, and that would focus on key areas like business planning, like community engagement and thinking about how you're going to market your share offer, looking at your governance and having your legal structures in place and everything like that, and ultimately helping you to put together your share offer document, which is essentially the sales prospectus that goes out to your community and hopefully convinces them to invest in your project. We also have a small grant available to help with the cost of promoting a share offer, and everything we do is fully funded and comes at no cost to groups, so it's all free to access support. So some of the kind of key facts about community shares, and this really is just a quick fly through. If you're interested, happy to take questions at the end, and you can also go and look at our website to learn a bit more. One of the most important things to note early on is that you need to be a community benefit society or a cooperative society to be able to issue community shares, and I'll say a bit more about that in the next slide. In both of those types of legal structure, the shareholders become members in the organisation. So the people who buy shares then own and control the organisation. They have rights to stand on the management committee. They get to elect who does stand on the management committee, and they have some influence over the running of things. That almost always works on a principle of one member, one vote. So regardless of how much money somebody puts in, everybody has an equal voice, and it aims to be a very democratic, community-controlled organisation. The technical name for community shares is withdrawable share capital. And what that means is that once you've bought shares in society, you can't then sell them on to anyone. They're not transferable like shares in a private company would be, but you can withdraw them from the society. So it's a bit more like having money in a bank account or a building society account. So if somebody puts in £100, the idea is that once the business is up and running, say after 3 years or 5 years or however long it might take, once the business is established, that person can withdraw their £100, but it won't go up in value. Shareholders can be incentivised, though. They can be incentivised to things like social investment tax relief. So quite often community shares are eligible for 30 to 50% business plan. Doesn't have the funds to offer interest. There's no requirement that you do that. One of the really key benefits of community shares, besides the fact that it's kind of flexible money that's yours to do with as you need to, it's also a great way to attract further funding. I think a lot of grant funders look really favourably upon a community share offer. It demonstrates that your community back you. It demonstrates that people want to see this become a reality. And I think a lot of grant funders it'll really strengthen an application if you can show that you're going to raise X amount of money from your own community. So just to say a bit more about that legal structure, a community benefit society is registered with the Financial Conduct Authority, and it's a legal structure in its own right. It can own assets, it can employ staff, it can really do anything that a company can do. It can also be charitable if it meets the charities test and it's performing charitable activity. It can be charitable. In most cases, community benefit societies are registered using model rules, which are essentially templates that you can access from organisations like ourselves and others across the UK who give you essentially a template that you can use. The process of registering takes usually around about a month, and it costs usually around £200 to register a society. It can be more, but in most cases it's around £240. Community benefit societies are a really well respected form of community governance now, so they're eligible for various community powers like community right to buy and asset transfer. They're also eligible for pretty much every major grant funder that I'm aware of. So things like Scottish Land Fund, all the lottery funds, all the Robertson Trust funds, any big grant funder you can think of can usually fund a community benefit society. And you do have some options there where you can connect to an existing organisation. So if you're already set up as a company or as a charity, there are options there that you can link to your existing charity and continue to have, you know, that connection there. And that's something that our support can help to assess with you. Just to say a little bit about our program's been around since 2014, and in that time we've supported 45 completed share offers. Between those, they've raised about £15 million. And really the past year to 18 months has been one of our busiest periods. So we're really seeing an uptake in activity. I think this is something that people are really starting to grasp onto now. And I think it's something that communities are starting to understand a lot better. So it feels like an opportune time to be doing community share offers. I think people are really starting to back them. And just one quick example before I finish. This is a share offer that took place last year. I think September was last year. A community in Drumnadrochit in the Highlands, they raised 110,000 using community shares. That's from around 350 members. And that was to help them to redevelop a Visit Scotland site in Drumnadrochit, which is going to be a community transport hub with cycle hire, electric charging points for cars and other vehicles, as well as a baggage handling service for people doing nearby hiking trails. And this is a good example of community shares working well alongside other grant funds, because they received a Scottish Land Fund award of, I think, around £160,000. And obviously the community shares money helped them to make a really strong business case that this was a sustainable business that would serve the community. So that's really the end of my presentation. This is just a little snapshot from an animation that we've released recently. If you go on our website, you can find it. It's called Community Business Making It Easy, and that's just showing our partnership with the Plunkett Foundation and Cooperative Development Scotland, who can also offer a lot of support around community shares and around cooperative governance. So do have a look and do ask any questions if you've got them, and I'm happy for people to get in touch if they've got specific projects they want to discuss. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Toby, and good to end on that example of Loch Ness, especially as they, well, their aspirations to run lots of different activities, but as you mentioned, cycle hire and a bike share scheme is one of them, which they, correct me if I'm wrong, but they got EST funding for. So there's a good example of blending community share model and funding.
Yep.
So I think now I will ask Dave, our tech support, to spotlight all of the speakers, if they will all fit on the screen, hope so, for a bit more time to ask some questions of our speakers. And apologies for the recording message that happened a few times throughout Zoom. I mean, I don't need to apologise anymore because everyone is familiar with the tech failures of Zoom, but anyway. So yeah, we will now ask some questions. I've got some in the chat box, which I'll focus on first, but also feel free to raise your hand if you've got a question on the Zoom panel to the right, or actually if you just want to come off mute and ask a question out loud, just to mix things up a bit, please feel free to do that as well. So the first question, actually before I ask that, so it was asked of EST whether previous successful applicants are allowed to reapply to add to a fleet, and Lauren said that they were. So I just wanted to check, is that the case with Graham, Paths for All, and also Sandra, Cycling Scotland? Can previous applicants reapply for this year's fund?
Yeah, I think what we would be looking for at Paths for All and with the Open Fund is progression. So if you've previously applied for a feasibility study, we would be looking for you to be supporting the scheme actually getting set up. And again, it's always about progression towards actual delivery and behaviour change is what we're looking for. But yes is a short answer.
Yeah, and for Cycling Scotland, it's very similar to Paths for All. So applicants can obviously apply again from one year to another. And again, it's interesting to see how the project is expanding. And obviously, if you applied for bikes for year one and it's growing and you can demonstrate a need, you can obviously apply again and just expand with your fleet of bikes.
Great, thanks, Sandra. Ken Gordon has a question for Toby. Which organisation does the Community Benefit Society become registered with?
So they're registered with the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. They would also have a very basic profile on Companies House just for employment and tax purposes. And if they were to be a charity, they would also be dual registered with OSCAR, but it's the FCA that's the main one there.
So I was just asking that question because we've just registered our own community group with OSCAR, and we were told it'd be 6 weeks, and I was corrected by them last week telling me it was 5 months now. So that was just a reason for asking that question.
Yeah, the turnaround with the FCA, they aim for 15 working days, so it should be 3 weeks in pretty much every case.
Yeah, so if OSCAR take another 4 months, it doesn't really matter.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Toby. A question from Graham Marshall. Does Paths for All fund feasibility studies which include a study for the use of cargo bikes?
Yes, I mean, we take the view for all of our projects, we take the view that you as the community organisation or the community themselves know what's required in your community better than we do. So if it's a study that includes the use of cargo bikes and you think that will be of benefit to your community, then yes, we support what you believe will be the best thing to do.
Thank you.
One thing to say is, I mean, our fund is very much about reducing car journeys. So, I mean, if you and anything you do has to be targeted at a specific target audience, and it has to really have a focus on reducing car journeys. So, yes, with that in mind, whatever the community thinks will work best, then yeah, we're happy to support it.
Brilliant, thank you, Graham. Anyone else? Any questions? Kate and David, this was something that we talked about before, but I wonder, we did this in the last forum, and Kate, I think you did mention a top tip, or maybe, yeah, no, so maybe it's David, sorry, I mentioned a top tip, but I just wondered with some of the schemes or participants on this list who may be thinking about setting up a bike share scheme, you know, from scratch, what would be your top tip, Kate?
I would say research the bike. I didn't realise the huge sort of variation or variability of the e-bikes available, and I would say definitely research your bikes along with your sort of potential users in advance quite well. And I know most people seem to have quite a good handle on that, but we were sort of a bit gung-ho and just went out there and got some bikes. And actually, in hindsight, I probably would have got slightly different bikes and definitely researched the certainly the trikes, because the sentiment behind the trike was to combat isolation as well. We've got a lot of elderly folk who just don't really get out very much, and thought that'd be a great opportunity for them to get to sort of non-essential journeys in the trike. So yeah, definitely research your bikes if you can. I mean, that maybe applies a little bit better to a rural community or an area that where you know the demographic a little bit better, but I think that's maybe my top tip. And also try and build, if you can, build your insurance costs into. I think a lot of funding applications perhaps don't incorporate the covering insurance, etc. But definitely be mindful and look at how you fund that. Otherwise, because you can get a bit of it can be a sting in the tail, I'd say.
Great, I think that's very good advice. David, have you got anything to add? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, David.
Yeah, I think similar to what's just been said, research your bikes. If you're only a small project, it depends how many bikes you've got. But I would say good research of the bikes, and if possible, try and get all the same bike. I'm thinking when it comes to maintenance and such like, because then you're only buying one set of spares that's common to all your bikes, etc. We've had it where we've had 3 different types of e-bike, and sure as heck you don't have the spares for the one that goes down at that time. So it's a lot easier to source your spares for the running, to keep them all running at the same time. But that's what I would say.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Naomi Arnold, which actually is more, it's kind of about the funding landscape in general, I think, in Scotland. So I think our 3 funders could potentially chip into this, but Naomi asks which funds would be best for funding staff positions to manage bike share schemes. Many of them seem to focus in infrastructure and assets. So I don't know, maybe if the 3 funders have some thoughts, but then I can chip in at the end, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll go first. So with the e-bike grant fund, we will not fund any direct staff costs. However, like I mentioned during the presentation, we do look at in-kind funding on a case-by-case basis. So if you're including in your project that you need, like I said, a project management to run the project on a day-to-day basis, we will not pay out on that money. However, you can use it as in-kind funding towards your project.
Lauren?
I think the short answer is probably Smarter Choices Open Fund. We are a revenue fund, and we are specifically set up for, well, not just staff positions, but staff positions are something that we can fund projects. We have funded a few. I think going back to the previous question about top tips, I think really looking into how you're going to run the scheme is an important thing to do. You've got lots of different options out there. Some of them can be really heavy for staff time, hands-on, managing bikes, moving bikes about, sorting out rehires of bikes. Whereas if it's a suitable, if you're a big enough position, you could get another company to run that for you. Obviously, it'll cost a bit more. So I think that early stage planning out what you're going to do and how it's going to work for your community is really important. Potentially a proper feasibility study. And then that all links into the other questions, I think. But for funding staff, certainly the Smart Choices, Smart Places Open Fund can fund staff.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, and regarding the Cycling Friendly Community Fund, this is not something we can, again, directly help with. I think the only really thing we could do is covering sessional costs, but that's obviously slightly different from like directly creating a staff position. So yeah, again, I think pastoral would be the best to go to in this situation.
Yeah, and actually, Naomi, those are obviously the only 3 funders that we've got on this Zoom call, but lots of schemes in Scotland get funding from other funders, and not necessarily just about, like, the fund isn't just dedicated to transport. So in the follow-up email that I'll send everyone, CoMo have some suggestions for different ways to either gain some income from your bike share scheme, but also other funds that could be relevant. So we'll share that as well. Just make a note to put that in the email. But thanks to everyone who helped answer to that question as well. Ken has said, what's the best source of information for selecting the most suitable e-bikes? And it's all very well thinking which are the best, but I think that's quite a good question. Where do you get the information from? Does anyone want to chip in? I mean, Lauren, maybe EST, that's kind of what you do, isn't it? To provide that advice?
Unfortunately, we don't provide advice on which e-bikes to select. Okay. The only thing that we encourage is that any of the e-bikes that are selected are minimum about £1,500. Anything under than that, we have found in previous years to be of not very good quality and they will not last. So just really looking at the quality of bike that you're buying is the main thing from us. And just, yeah, thinking of a minimum price is about £1,500. Anything under that we generally won't fund.
Hey.
Yeah, just on that note, and a bit of another tip would be, and probably Dave to back this up, and there's probably a lot more cycle shops in East Lothian than when we are, but also bear in mind how far away, it's easier really to work with a local supplier. So we're in Skye, and Inverness is our closest town. It's 100 miles away. It makes a difference to get a bike probably from there than my first fleet of bikes was from London. So that, in hindsight, wasn't the best idea. And so make sure that, and a lot of bike shops are also aligned to a certain brand of bike, and that can sort of be a bit of an issue too, because you might just, that might just be the determining factor, really, your locality.
We do want to say as well that if you are looking to apply for the e-bike grants fund, source your bikes and equipment from the UK. We have found last year that many of our projects who have e-bikes coming from Europe, they maybe ordered them last year and they're only getting delivered now. They're now facing import tax because of Brexit. So just bear that in mind to look at UK suppliers. And like Kate said, the closer to your project, the better.
That's a good point.
I think it's important to build a relationship at any project, build a relationship with your local dealer. Yeah. And supporting local commerce as well. And that was, I think that was one of the criteria when we first got our bikes. We had to try and support local. So it is, it's worthwhile then build up that relationship with your local dealer. But as you say, they can go towards one brand, lean towards one brand, but it's worth keeping in mind.
Can I say briefly about that as well? I mean, I think even this meeting today shows that a lot of the projects that are already set up or thinking about setting up are very friendly and very approachable and will help out. So I think a good first step is to speak to other projects that have done it before you. Their advice. I mean, in particular, there's the Scottish Active Travel Hub Network has just been set up recently. There's a website with guidance on it. There's also a Facebook group that anybody with a relevant project can just join and ask questions on there, and then people can stick in answers or will stick in answers. So I think speaking to people is a big thing as well.
And just to add to that, David Reed from Sustrans has said he's got a contact at Sustrans who can provide guidance as well, particularly on e-cargo bikes. So this follow-up email is going to be full of lots of information for everyone, but that's why we're having the forum. So thanks, Graham, for those suggestions as well. We've got, anyone got a last question that they'd like to, sort of burning question they'd like to ask before we wrap up? No, that's grand. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks to speakers especially, and thanks so much for sticking to time. I didn't have to prompt or do anything, be worried, so that was great. The last kind of couple of things that I wanted to mention for everyone on the call, just about CoMo in general, was that we also have a micro grant. Many of you know about this already, but it's up to £2,500, and this micro grant is really about the assets that you would need to share your bikes. So the booking software, for example, David mentioned an app earlier in his presentation. It would cover the costs of that. So, the kind of the things that sometimes are a bit forgotten about when you're trying to actually share your bikes. And I will share information on that as well. Ali, actually, maybe you could put that in the chat box right now, Ali, if that's all right, just because I haven't got a slide on it. And also, I just wanted to mention that we're doing quite a bit of work on how to make bike share sustainable, bike share schemes sustainable beyond funding, beyond grant funds. And I'm spending quite a lot of time researching that. And so we'll disseminate all our findings and kind of suggestions as and when, just because I think that's quite an important conversation to have. And actually it might be quite good to spend a bit more time on that at a future forum. And the third thing is that we have a podcast now. We had our first podcast, which featured on community bike share schemes in Scotland. And it featured Aaron Eco-Savvy, who presented at our last webinar forum, and also Dumb Lane Development Trust, both different schemes, but running bike share schemes. One a volunteer-led model, one a project coordination model. So you can hear me again if you want to in this podcast, and also these two schemes. But we will be looking to make another one in the next couple of months. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that as well. And the business plan that we'll be doing for bike share schemes. So I will do this big follow-up email with the slides, with all the information that's been circulated. If any of you have any other questions that you haven't thought about, I'll share my contact details after this with you all, and we can just carry on having conversations. I think it's been really great, really useful, and lots of insight from this projects and from the funders and from Toby's different take on how to fund bike share. So yeah, I'm now going to wrap up and do that awkward thing at the end where it's quite hard to leave Zoom. If everyone just, yeah, bye and thanks very much, and I'll be in touch. Cheers. Thanks, speakers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.